I don't think that I'm the only one that has a love-hate relationship with terrain. I love the idea of it, and seeing it executed by others, good or bad, I still think that it's well done. But doing it myself is a different story. I've tried to make pieces of terrain in the past, but they've either been awful or I've just lost heart and interest and stopped working on them. This could be due to the fact that I've always tried to make buildings or structures or something that takes a certain amount of precision. This has been for D&D or futuristic type games that involve precise geometry, and these take an amount of precision and patience that I just don't have for terrain. And I'm not sure what it is. I can sit down and fiddle with a model for hours with no problems, but with terrain, I get real impatient real quick. But with these Warcry boards, I decided to take a different approach. I wanted to do things that were more organic or natural and build my way up. So I got one of the 4x8 XPS foam boards. And for Warcry, with the size that it is, 30 by 22, this can make you 6 boards with a bit left over to make terrain. But I decided to make 5 boards because I like my terrain to be pretty dense. And this is just personal taste. And the idea I had was for a blasted waste or Badlands type desert. And being that this was a fantasy world, I didn't have to follow our nature's rules exactly. And this was an important lesson that I learned. Give the idea of something that people can acknowledge and relate to, but you don't have to adhere specifically to anything. These rocks and structures don't make sense, but your mind can suspend reality enough that you can find it plausible. And I decided to go with some materials that I was more familiar with. The board itself is just XPS foam, and then I took glue and black paint, watered down ever so slightly, and painted over it to give it a nice hard coating. I found out later that I should have scuffed it up. It would have helped it hold to the board a little bit better, but once it was dry, it was fine. It was just a little rough in the application. And then I just took very slightly watered down spackle and just dabbed it all over the board to give it a nice, interesting texture to look at instead of it being flat. This is just simple EVA foam floor mats that I used a box cutter and scissors to chop up with. I'd used all of this stuff before when making costumes and props. And I found that the rougher the cut on this, the better, and overall, it just didn't terribly matter because I was roughing up the edges anyway with a super cheap Dremel, just sanding off the edges, giving it kind of a rougher hewn shape. And then I just went and hot glued them together, and then took super cheap craft paint, some wine, red, orange, ochre, tan, and just kind of layered it on top of each other, much like I was painting. And the base colors just added depth, and it was the tan that really kind of brought everything out. The main thing that I pulled away from this is to look at it like when you start painting minis. Yeah, you can just jump straight in and try to figure out how to do all the details and layering and highlighting right away, but sometimes it's good just to start simply. Get your base coats down, then work on your highlights, and then more of your detail work going in and your smoother blends. And it's the same with terrain. I'm finding out that starting more simply, you're building your skills and figuring out where to go and how to go with those. So I thought that this first one ended up looking pretty good. And I've got plans for quite a few more boards, so we'll see what happens in the future.